Welcome back, everybody. And without any further ado, I pass it to Chloe.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the awesome pass, Omar. All right. So I have two incredible people with you. And I don't know if you've ever catched my hacker rights talk, but I always talk about what happened to these two individuals. They are employees over at Coalfire. And I'm going to introduce you guys to Gary and Justin. Gary and Justin, do you mind saying hello and tell people who you are?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'll go first because we figured out after doing this so many times, Gary has an awesome background in bio. I have to go first. Senior security consultant with Coalfire, doing all the things offensive. So a lot of fun. And then, yeah, we'll get to dive into our story here in a bit.
I'm Gary, and my bio is not that awesome. I work at Coalfire too, and I do the exact same stuff Justin does.
Well, there we go. So let's first start off with the main thing. What happened to you guys? Do you want to share a little bit about what happened to you of a time where you ended up in, I don't know, in a cell at one point? That'd be fantastic.
That one little time. Okay.
Yeah, that one little time. It had
Quick
no impact
synopsis.
at all,
Yeah,
right?
just
No
no
impact at all.
repercussions.
Okay.
Was totally fine. Short stint, hour, and it was over. No big deal. Yeah, this was the small time we were hired by the state court administration of Iowa. So, I mean, the government branch that oversees all the courts in the state wanted typical testing, right? So full red team, full scope engagement. So everything network, everything social engineering is involved, as well as the physical penetration test. So we're in Iowa, we fly out after we've done some of the virtual testing, we're on site, breaking into courthouses, finding vulnerabilities, reporting on that stuff until we get to one little courthouse in Dallas County, Iowa. Broke in, set off an alarm. Police responded. They were great, super cordial. Talked to them, show them the get out of jail free letter. Everyone's like, you guys are great, good to go. Let's just talk about your job. How cool is this, right? Until the sheriff shows up and things dramatically changed and went downhill very quickly from somebody who had more of jurisdiction or territorial disputes with the state. So in order to flex that, he wanted to arrest us, which he was successful in doing. Threw us in jail almost for about 24 hours. And then continued to press charges with burglary and possession of burglary tools, which carries a nice little fine of 7 years of jail time or prison time in the state of Iowa. So we're fighting that for months and months until finally charges are reduced, but still not dropped altogether. And so it was just this long drawn out ordeal. But that's the synopsis of it. So what do you want to pick apart? What are we going to dive into today, Chloe?
All right. So my first question for you is when you entered the courthouse and you were doing all the right things, did you ever have like a gut sensation something might go down today?
We had it well before. There was good communication amongst the team, Gary and myself. Hey, guys, small town sheriff, we're kind of familiar with how law enforcement operates a bit. And a lot of times those kind of people see that as their own little kingdom. And in this case, this man wanted to be informed about every little thing going on there first, and he wasn't in this case. So yeah, we definitely had the spider senses going off, not just on this engagement, but on more recent ones that we've been on as well. There's definitely that spider sense, and the hairs on the back of our necks were standing up that night for sure.
And what are some of the fears that you guys were experiencing before that moment? You did talk about like how the sheriff in the town, it's like his kingdom and everything. But tell me a little bit more about that one.
You're always apprehensive when you have to deal with law enforcement, just because you don't know what the other person on the other end is going to do. We've had engagements, one recently where it was the officers first, basically their first call that they went on that they didn't know was a fake call. And so when they had showed up to the facility manager was there. She was aware of what we were doing. And she had to tell me, she's like, look, you need to calm down. Like, this is probably these guys trying to break in, and we've hired them, because he was shaking and he was nervous. You know, he had the adrenaline going. So you don't ever know who's on the other end and what they're dealing with if it's have a bad day. So that's kind of where some of that apprehension comes from. But to be honest with you, I don't think we expected, obviously, what happened. We've had so many dealings with law enforcement, and every other time except the one time with the sheriff, right? It's always been great. Like, once they verify who we are and once they verify that we're there doing what we say we're supposed to do, That's usually the end of it, and we get to bullshit with them for 10 or 15 minutes, and they ask us a bunch of questions, and every other time it's been a great experience. Even this time it was a great experience until the sheriff showed up. They did their due diligence and they did everything. So that's kind of where that apprehension comes from. You never know what's going to happen, type of thing. But yeah, we didn't expect to be actually handcuffed and carted off to jail and charged and have felony records.
So tell me a little bit about like when the sheriff came up to you guys and approached you, because I know like beforehand everyone was like, "Oh, that's so cool! This is what you do for a job. This is what you do for a living. This is awesome," on the grounds. But then when the sheriff turned up, it changed the whole dynamics where they were already, thinking that everything's fine, that you guys are good to go. You were hired to protect us. But then the sheriff shows up and he says, what exactly to you guys? And how was your reaction individually?
Well, I'll let Justin answer this. However, I will say, right as he showed up, all their body cams went off. They even said, "Oh, this is going to be good," and then they turned all their body cams off, already knowing the sheriff obviously was, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for them on what they thought, but I can give you my thoughts on it. You don't turn your body cam off if you think everything's going to be on the up and up. So,
Right. Yeah. Nothing spells out justice like let's turn off our surveillance equipment. So, there is a lot of that footage. So two different departments showed up. One was sheriff. One is the local city police. And I think it was the city police officer actually kept their body cam running. So we do have some of that footage available in the Black Hat Talk. If you want to review that, it's on YouTube somewhere now. So yeah, I mean that's it. I mean you can see the mood change in the air once he shows up, and it starts getting very offensive and saying this is bullshit. This isn't allowed. These guys can't be doing this. The state doesn't have authority to be testing our courthouse. And that's basically where it went. Was this is a jurisdiction issue between the state and the county. And you would think we would have some corporate protection, us working for Coalfire and just executing on this contract. All that went out the window, and then charges were immediately pressed against us. We are individuals in jail. Coalfire as an entity was no longer legally involved from that point forward. So they ended up doing the right thing. There was a little bit more back and forth than you'd like to hear as an employee afterwards. But eventually, Coalfire came to our aid. Again, we were sitting in jail for about 20 hours before we were finally bailed out, but good on Coalfire for putting together the bail money, which had increased, I think, by 10 times because the county prosecutor had made a case that we're a flight risk. And really, it was just stomping over the little guys, just trying to make this as big of a show and debacle as they could for them causing a fuss that this is the county's courthouse versus the state. So we got charged instead of $5,000 bail a piece, was 50 grand a piece. And so Coalfire had to come through with either 100,000 or 10% of that 10,000 to get us bailed out of jail. So motions were high, definitely throughout all of that. And there is just, more and more sinking experiences as you're going through it. So, from the moment we're booked, okay, misunderstanding, we kind of get it. Like, and especially, if officers are scared, you have new guys showing up when you're in the situation. We are absolutely fine. Slow movements, guys. We'll turn our back. If you want to put us in cuffs so you feel more safe, put us in the back of the car. No problem whatsoever. We can talk it out that way. Not against that whatsoever. This went quite a ways beyond that. So we're booked in jail. Go to the arraignment the following morning. We go in front of a judge, and it was just a shit show. Clearly she had not been given any of the details that were surfaced the previous night, where the sheriff was talking to the judicial branch employees, confirming that we were supposed to be on site, that yes, the state hired this engagement. The judge, the information she had was these two guys were caught breaking into the courthouse. That's all there is to it. We need to send away these guys for life. So every stage of the process just gets worse and worse, and we're just hanging our heads kind of in despair that this is just going on to this extent. And the way that I thought jails operated, I thought it was more of a 9 to 5 business, and there's no clocks in the jail cell. So after our arraignment, which is at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, we go back, we have breakfast, lunch, and then once dinner came, all throughout the day, waiting to get phone calls, which never came, was in communication with nobody. At least I wasn't. Gary had a little bit more communication. But once dinner came out, I thought, oh man, it's 5 o'clock. The jail is shutting down, so we're going to be in here at least overnight again, if not longer. So my heart kind of sank at that point. But lo and behold, we got bailed out later that night at whatever time it was.
And they were trying to kill me. I told them I was deathly allergic to milk, like EpiPen style allergic to milk, and they kept serving me milk products. And I was like, I can't eat this. I'm allergic to milk. You're going to kill me. And the guy's like, oh, sorry. Lunchtime rolls around. There's my thing of milk. There's the cheese. There's all the milk products. I was like, what do you want me to do with this? I can't eat any of this. They just, zero fucks were given at that point.
And I'm assuming is this your first time ever in a cell for both of you?
Yeah, we're pretty
Perfectly clean records. Yeah.
pretty straight laced. Yeah.
And then the other thing with that is that they turn off their body cams. That is just one of those moments where you just pause and it makes you take a step back and a pause, because that is not okay. That's never okay. That's usually like the biggest sign. Cover-up's about to happen. We already know what's about to happen to you guys, but we're not gonna. And it's one of those things that you kind of wish that those other people that were around you stood up and said, like, no, we should keep our body cams on. Like, these guys, they have a permit to do this in a sense. They're hired by a company to do this stuff. They're not doing anything that's malicious. They're actually doing their job. But, they still turned off their body cams.
You nailed it. It kind of spells out precedent. This wasn't the first time anything like this has gone on. So between those antics, the county prosecutor, the judges, or the magistrate, it kind of spells a whole story of the way things have been going down in that county, at least to me. So people were trained, okay, there's an incident about to go down that the police don't want recorded. They already know to turn off their body cameras. That was a horrible note to take away from that.
And have either, oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I was just going to say it wasn't an accident either. It wasn't like it just suddenly stopped working. He grabs his body cam that was on his chest. He goes, oh, here comes the sheriff. This ought to be good. And then he goes, oh, better turn this off. And then it goes off. So it wasn't like the battery ran out, or it was a mistake, or he accidentally hit the wrong button, or somebody bumped up against him. It was, I am consciously turning this off. I make a decision because this should be good and the sheriff's about to talk. So let me make sure that it's not recorded.
Did the officers get like a slap on the hand or wrist or anything for turning off their body cams? Because they're supposed to have them on all the time. But I'm assuming they didn't get in trouble at all.
No, of course not. I mean, that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people think about when something like this happens. The sheriff doesn't have any repercussions to do what he did. And he's on video saying, the onus is on them. It's up to them to prove themselves basically innocent. And that's, of course, counterintuitive to what everybody has always been taught in the United States of America, is you're innocent until proven guilty. And he even says the exact opposite. Hey, this is on them. They've got to prove themselves. I don't care. And so he just arrests us. It doesn't affect him. He gets to go home. He sleeps in bed. He has breakfast in the morning while we're sitting in jail, because it doesn't affect him at all. And then when all this is over and 6 months later and we've gone through all this stuff, it never affected him other than possibly politically, but he ran unopposed, so it didn't really affect him in that manner at all. And we have all the fallout and the byproduct that happens from having a felony arrest record. And of course, nothing happens to him at all. He can just arrest and be an asshole and say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants and throw his version of justice around, and there's absolutely no repercussions. And when we started talking to our lawyer about it, we find out that, police officers are immune from X, Y, and Z because they're operating under the pretext that they're doing the right thing or something. That's all. Well, I thought I was doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden they're free and clear of any wrongdoing whatsoever, even though the conversations that he had with us, not once were they like, look guys, you broke the law, you're not allowed to be here. It was, no, this is our building, they don't have jurisdiction. Every conversation he had with us was 100% about jurisdiction and the state not being allowed to do what they did. He never said that we weren't supposed to be there according to the state. He never said that the state didn't allow us or the state didn't tell us we could be there. It was, well, no, this is my courthouse. You're not allowed to be here because of the state. And even if they did hire you, I don't care. I'm still arresting you because this is my courthouse. It was 100% all jurisdictional. And he was mad because somebody didn't let the king know that there was somebody in his kingdom.
Yeah, I'll add as far as repercussions, it almost went the opposite manner. The state ended up, after all of this, bending their will to meet the sheriff's demands, which was basically, all right, they're never going to do penetration testing again. They're not doing any offensive engagements like this in manner. And the sheriffs and all 50 courthouses in the state of Iowa are responsible for their own security, their own courthouse, which, I mean, you can imagine how that's going to go. So it was kind of terrible. The repercussions, all the knee-jerk reactions that you'd expect from an entity that has no awareness of security whatsoever.
So then my next question for you guys is that, do you think he would have been different and everyone would have been more different if they actually knew about the hacker culture of the community, and know that you guys were security researchers, security consultants that were basically protecting and serving them and their community? Do you think that would have made a difference? Or do you think this is more about, instead of ignorance, it's more of an arrogance and an ego situation at that point?
Definitely number two. Even the sheriff, when he was speaking, he was saying, I've got a lot of friends that do this, but this isn't the right way. When Black Hills came in and he was talking to everybody, oh, I've got friends that do this stuff. It's not like I don't understand what's going on, is at least is what he said. But yet he's on video going, I've never heard of anything like this. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. So yeah, he's a very large hypocrite in my opinion, and he lied a couple of times. And in our Black Hat talk that we did, I point out a lot of that stuff. When the very beginning of the video, when the cruiser is cruising around at about 20-30 miles an hour to come to our call, he's telling everybody that his officers are going 150 miles an hour to the call, and how how you would feel bad if one of our officers killed one of your family because they were going so fast on the way to the call. But yet we have body cam footage of somebody going 30 miles an hour, stopping at stop signs, obeying the laws when they're on their way to their courthouse, and him saying that I never said anything. If you looked in the media, I haven't said one word. And then I'm sitting there flashing all of the comments that he gave in articles and in interviews that he gave right before he went to that talk. The guy just, he didn't tell the truth about anything after the fact. So I have a very hard time believing that if he actually knew anything about us, which I don't think he did, or he was privy to everything, I don't think things would have changed much outside of the state kissing his ass and asking him to have permission if they could come to his county. That really, to me, was the crux of the issue. Is he was not asked if they could do this. And to be honest with you, I think even if he was asked, I don't think he would have allowed it. I would think he was said, no, this is my county. We have our security. It's fine. We don't need you, type of thing, is the idea that I get from him.
Yeah. And I'll add that awareness and kind of that outreach and the understanding of the work that we do is absolutely critical, and it would make a ton of difference in some situations. With that sheriff, not so much. And even the responding officers who had never heard of this before, they got it. They talked to the point of contacts. They were able to assess in real time and get up to speed. Where it would have helped is you have these politicians, and I don't know how people like this get elected, but calling us bandits in the public spotlight, saying, what is this? You have guys breaking into buildings. How dare they? This is just absolutely asinine. And then them wanting to press non-felonious misconduct charges against the people that hired us to do proactive security testing. So there was a lot of backwardness there, or at least just not understanding modern security practices. So as an industry, we definitely still have a lot of work to do, and Chloe, you're spearheading it, so awesome. But great to have forums like this where we can start discussing how to get this more in front of the eyes of everyday people, or at least the stakeholders who are going to have some influence over this going forward.
So for those that just joined us at any point in this conversation, I want you to understand what has just happened. So we have two people that were hired to do security testing. They were hired to protect and serve. And what ended up happening was that a sheriff decided to show up on the scene with his privilege and used it against them, in a sense where he also has a team of people around him that covered up their cameras, their body cameras. And what had happened to Justin and Gary was that they ended up having to be in a cell for about 24 hours, correct?
Correct.
And
charges pressed for 6 months. Yeah.
And charges. So at this moment, I think it might be a good conversation to talk about I think for some, they've never been in a cell before. And for some people, when it's their first time in a cell, it's one of those moments where you don't feel like you have control of your life. You're very scared of what ends up happening. You don't know how to feel nor think at the same time because there's no one to talk to about it. And you feel pretty much isolated usually. I was wondering if you guys can share your experience. And I know Gary, giving you dairy products and you have an allergic reaction, that's never okay. Like, I feel like people are always like, they don't take allergies very seriously at all. And I always hope that they have an EpiPen nearby at all times because of how they do this kind of stuff. And you see it a lot also in like Oakland and in our jails and everything is like, they'll give products that people are allergic to and they just don't care. And I'm curious to know, what was your experience being in that cell without knowing what time it is, except for like seeing what time feeding is? But what was this whole experience for each one of you guys individually, like the emotions that came out because of it?
For me, being in the cell itself isn't really that big of a deal. The funny thing is, the first thing you start thinking of is how you break out of the cell, especially when you're in physical security, right? You're like, okay, what kind of latch is on this door? I wonder if it's if they've got a button around here. I wonder if we could bypass it. I wonder if it's always open or always closed. The things that you go through your mind is just you try to keep yourself occupied. The part that I had a hard time dealing with is, man, I've never been good at being punished for stuff I didn't do. If I've done something, or even if I think I may have deserved it, or if there's any part of me that's like, okay, I probably shouldn't have done it. Like if I would have gotten a bar fight and I would have been in jail, fine. Like, okay, I shouldn't have punched the guy. I get it. But when you're there and 100% without a doubt that you didn't do anything wrong, that's the part that really, really, really makes it hard because you're mad. You're like, I'm being punished. I'm literally in jail and I didn't do shit. Like I didn't do anything wrong. And so then you just sit there and you just get mad. That's all I did. I just got mad the entire time. And then I got a guy on the right of me that's coming down from heroin, and he's got cold sweats and shaking, and he's got all the mats that they give you to sit on, and he's sweating all over. He's like, "Oh, dude, you need another mat." And he throws me the mat. I don't want that mat, dude. I'm cool, thanks. So you're sleeping on the concrete because you don't want the heroin sweat mat from the guy next to you, and then the other guy that gets in there is a third time felon saying he's really got to stop. He's like, I got to stop with the felonies, man. This is my third time. I don't know if I'm ever getting out. I'm like, so great. I was just here working. I don't know why I'm here, but that's why I'm here. But yeah, Justin had a little bit different of experience. I actually got to call and, collect calls in or collect calls out, but I actually got to talk to my boss at the time. And that I don't know if I would rather be in my position knowing a little bit more or in Justin's, but I got the call that like, hey, the state has completely disavowed you, and they said that you went rogue and you weren't supposed to be pen testing, and they have lawyered up and they are no longer talking or helping with anything. So good luck, guys. I was like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll say, I mean, it kind of goes against all your instincts and ideals as a human, as an American, and especially as a hacker. You don't like to be locked up. You kind of reject that authority that's crushing down on you because they want to, because of no valid reason. So definitely, yeah, from the eyes of a physical security perspective, you're learning how to break out. And
you have to stay in here. Sorry. It's my dog.
It would have been a little bit difficult. They're using 12 lever locks. Everything's mechanical. Didn't look like there was any automatic override. So fire or whatever hazard comes into play, we're just smoked if nobody comes to get us. So I all of my life has been about centering the power underneath me, being able to be very capable in my situation, being able to handle myself regardless of what comes my way. And then when you're locked in a cell like that, kind of goes all out the window. And like Gary's saying, without actual valid cause for it, you feel very slighted. And especially when you're called on site to help improve things for them, to help make things more secure for them or for their constituents. So upsetting experience all around.
And then validation that they knew we were supposed to be there. Yeah, we've already talked to the state. Yes, you're under contract. Yeah, we don't care. Yeah, we're still arresting you and pressing charges anyway. That makes it, that just compounds it. Makes it so much worse when they knew we were supposed to be there and they've called and talked to our contacts And our contacts actually got a hold of one of our contacts, and he's like, yeah, we've talked to him. He's not budging. He doesn't really care. You think he'd be more, understanding of your position? I'm like, well, he's obviously not, dude. Why don't you come down here and get us out? Oh, we're working on it. And then of course, they never show up, which doesn't help either, right? When you've got your customer that you're under contract with, that's the state. I mean, it wasn't like this was, Joe off the street that owns a cybersecurity company that asked us to come in and pen test, and now all of a sudden he's in trouble with the law, right? And he's a little nervous. This is the friggin' state we're dealing with. And then the state was like, oh no, we don't want to make the sheriff mad. We're not going to show up. Oh, we're going to lawyer up because we think we may have messed something up. So screw you guys. We don't really care if you're in prison for 7 years, as long as it doesn't look bad on us, and as long as we get to be rehired into our positions. And that really was the part that messed up. There's so many people could have stopped this, like at any point, at any time, but people were more worried about make sure that I still have my job, and let's send 2 innocent people to jail and possibly 7 years of prison time because I don't want to lose my job. And I have such a hard time like accepting that there was so many people involved and nobody was willing to do the actual right thing. Like nobody stepped up and said, these guys, we hire these guys. This is on us. Nobody said that. Not one person said that at all. And they were just, everybody was willing to let us go to prison for 7 years. For what? For a job? I could never, ever, ever, ever do that. If I did something that screwed something up, and none of them would have went to jail. That's the funny thing. They may have lost their job. They may have been in trouble, but none of them would have went to jail. And if I'm sitting there and I do something that makes somebody possibly go to prison, I cannot think of a scenario where I'm like, sorry, dude, don't want to lose my job. Hey, good luck for the next 7 years in Lompoc. I don't know. That's just me.
Well, it's that kind of like gang mentality, right? If the leader is like going to go and do one thing, everyone follows it. And this is something that we have seen quite a bit in various cases, even in the States. But I'm curious to know is how you were feeling afterwards. I would imagine slated is still one of the things, but getting out of that, it probably, I don't know if you ever question, like, why am I still doing this type of work if people are going to do this to me when I'm doing my job? Did that ever cross your mind?
No,
Thinking, yeah.
not me. I don't think so. I mean, I've been protecting and serving in one way or another. I was a deputy sheriff in college for a year, and then I was a Marine for 7 years, and then I was an engineer building helicopters for Marines for another 5 years before any of this stuff. So in some form, fashion or another, I've been trying to serve and or protect somebody or something. At this point, it's what I do. It's my nature. So no, I wasn't going to let some hick in Iowa that had a bad day and was angry at his jurisdictional issues ruin that for me. That's just not going to happen. And I'm much better at my job than he is at his job. So I refuse to let somebody who's bad at their job affect me or what I do.
Yep, agreed. It's had some effect. It's changed our approach in the way we deal with some entities, specifically government entities, or situations where we're dealing on public property. But at the end of the day, I mean, we eat, breathe, sleep, live physical security. This is our passion. So no, definitely not going to stop.
Yeah. And since then we've actually started, obviously made some changes, right? We've started contacting both the local law enforcement, whether or not that's city or county or whatever it is. And then although sheriff is usually the county, but there's some areas that they only have county law enforcement. So you just contact the sheriff's department. But in all the cases that we've been doing since then, we contact, if they've got city police, we contact the city police, and then we contact the sheriff on top of it. And we make sure that our clients contact both law enforcement agencies as well. And the weird thing is what made this, I don't want to say the perfect storm, but allow it to happen, is if this was a private company, never could have happened like this, because the sheriff couldn't have screamed jurisdictional issues. It would have been like, dude, we're working. This is our property. This is private. Go away. Let us do our job. What the hell do you think you're doing? And any company owner would have said the same, like, hey, we've hired these guys to come in here and do a physical security test. You arresting them on private property is the same thing as them walking into your office, in the middle of downtown Seattle and arresting you for working on your computer. Just because you think you don't like something doesn't give you the authorization to come in and arrest somebody on private property doing something that's not illegal. It just so happened that this was, state versus county, and it gets convoluted because technically the state rents out the property from the county, and it's up to the county to provide security. However, everybody in the building is a state employee, and they're employed by the state. And what made this super confusing and even more aggravating was we were state contractors. We had a right to be in the building. The state authorized us to be in the building, and they kept saying jurisdictional issues and problems, like, you don't have jurisdiction to do this. Really? Well, the judge is a state employee. This judge has the right to be there. And if she would have forgot her computer and came in at 12 o'clock, guess what? You're not arresting her. But here we are, state contracted employees with a contract on site doing our job, but somehow we weren't supposed to be there. Yep, whatever.
Oh, what was
we're still aggravated if you can't tell.
No, this is good. If people can see this, it's like,
Mhm.
this is why change needs to happen now. I mean, this is our fear in the hacker community is doing this type of work, even if it's our job, even if it's like a vulnerability disclosure, we're always scared of moments like this because there is no protection in a sense. And that's one of the issues, and that's why we came today as a conference, is to learn a little bit more of how to go about this structure that's in place right now, where we can still protect and serve, and at the same time, protect ourselves while doing so. What was it like for you guys when it was coming up to a court, when you were going to court to have this thing looked at? What were the feelings that went through your mind? Did you feel like Coalfire was going to protect you as much as possible? Did you feel like you're kind of more on your own? What were the sensations and emotions that were coming through?
It was definitely uncharted territory. Gary had more of a law background than I did, so I was completely fresh going into this, had no idea what to expect, and learned very quickly, the difference between criminal and civil cases, which is kind of one thing that we're going to touch on with a Good Samaritan program. But going through it, charges were pressed against us. Coalfire had no legal obligation, really. I'm not sure if there was anything in our contracts, to come defend us, since charges were pressed against us individually. I had always assumed, okay, anything ever happen, companies got it taken care of. I'll be a fly on the wall, and that'll be their legal situation to work through. Was not at all the case. So the company had to make some good decisions to find lawyers that would support us. They ended up paying for it all, so that was fantastic. But still, the process took 6 months, and there were so many opportunities for either somebody to do the right thing or for common sense to prevail and just drop the charges and say, obviously, these guys were hired by the state. What are we doing here? This is just nonsense. But we were exercising every avenue possible. And unless the county prosecutor decided to drop charges, nothing else was going to come of it. We even had a contact with the governor, I believe it was, and she said she was powerless to intervene whatsoever, either during or after for a pardon. And that would only apply if we were convicted. So I mean, still, there's so many repercussions that lasted even after we had charges dropped. So the process was, we were charged with burglary, possession of burglary tools for about the first month. Once they went through to whatever the next step in the court process, the legal process is, they reduced charges to trespassing. And I think they expected us to tap out and just say, well, we'll take it. We'll accept that. That's obviously better than 7 years of prison time. And then it would kind of relieve them of any liability in the situation, which of course we weren't willing to do. And so we said, no, absolutely not. We're going to keep fighting this. And it lasted for about another 5 months afterwards. After we had gone through and we got bailed out after the first 20 hours in jail, we each flew back to our respective states. So it was all a virtual process. We did have some meetings with other county prosecutors for downtown Des Moines. So that was a whole nother avenue. We were looking at getting charges pressed against us from a whole nother entity too. So we're about to have to fight 2 legal battles at once. And again, just asinine. Like, guys, you already know the situation. The state hired us. Why are you even evaluating that option? So it was disheartening all along the way. Definitely seemed like a violation of justice. Didn't seem, there's no common sense to it, and we were we had rights stripped of us too. So it wasn't innocent until proven guilty. Gary and I, both avid hunters and gun owners, could not purchase guns in the meantime. Even after charges had dropped, there was some time where we weren't able to purchase firearms. We had all our tools stripped of us. They didn't want to give us our tools back. They said, well, if we do that, it's admitting that these guys aren't a threat to the streets or anything like that. It's like, what are you guys even after? So it was just pretty much them playing hardball and just trying to punish us for God knows what. I don't know, a jurisdiction issue between county and state.
Did you guys ever feel like you were like pawns?
Yeah,
Oh,
the whole time.
Yeah, the ignorance was stifling, to say the least. The elected officials, how they said and the things they said, you're just, if you there's hours and hours of the video, but if you watch it, you just scratch your head. You're like, how can these people be in charge? Like they're idiots. Like they're literally idiots. They're completely talking out of their backsides. They have no idea what they're talking about, but here they are trying to pass sweeping legislation on something they have no idea about. Like they didn't ask for a third party to come in for for security's sake and say, is this the best thing that we should really do? It was, nope, we're never going to do testing any security again because we never want to have something like this happen because it's dangerous. Well, you know what's even more dangerous is if somebody just walks into your open courthouse in the middle of the night because you didn't latch the door and place a bomb somewhere. That's what's dangerous, right? Oh no, let's not do that. Let's not prevent things like that. Let's not, let's not go out there and show people that there's issues. We're just not going to worry about it, and we're going to not talk about it, and then it's really not going to exist. Idiocracy was at a completely different level when you start seeing the state legislation, how they talked about things and the things that they wanted to pass. And as far as being a pawn, there was a comment. There was actually one person in this entire thing that had common sense outside of our lawyer and us, of course, and actually waited and put two and two together. So they had the district attorney for what was the county that Iowa or not, Des Moines was in, Justin?
Des Moines County, I don't know.
Was it Des Moines County? Yeah, whatever
Probably
it was. Yeah, the county with the original courthouse that we broke into, not the one in Needle, Iowa, but the original one. That prosecutor for our case wasn't the actual DA. He was an assistant DA that was handed our case to prosecute. He was telling us, he said, look, the DA wants somebody to be at fault. That's all there is to it. Somebody has to be responsible.
Someone's head has to roll for this.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were saying. Somebody's head has to roll for this. They didn't care who it was. They didn't care if that person was actually guilty. They just wanted to place guilt on someone and make someone guilty. Had nothing to do with actually really being guilty or somebody actually going after justice. It was all political. Well, somebody needs to be in trouble for this. We have to have somebody's head roll for these situations. And this gentleman actually took his time. He actually waited. Regardless of what everybody else said, that's what their comment was. We're currently investigating this. We don't know if we're going to bring charges or not. Let us do our thing. And probably a month later, he came to our lawyer and was just like, you know what? I don't see how these guys are guilty of anything. Like they were doing their job. He's like, maybe on a bad day, they may be guilty of criminal trespass. If you want to say that state employees aren't supposed to be there at a certain time and they were anyway, but that just like any other state employee, he's like, these guys aren't guilty. They didn't do anything wrong. And at some point, the DA is like, you need to charge these guys. And he's like, I can't. They're not guilty. I can't charge somebody legally or morally knowing that, in my mind, they're not guilty. If you want to charge these guys, you're going to have to get a different prosecutor. The only one with any kind of sense of morality whatsoever in that entire rigmarole was, I believe his title was, he was an assistant DA, but he was definitely a prosecutor for Des Moines County or whatever county that Des Moines is in. And he was like, the way that it should be. That's the way that it's supposed to be. And he was fighting for us the entire time. So these guys aren't guilty at all. So yeah, political. The whole thing just was it was very interesting. If people out there watching they've read about it, or they watched our Black Hat talk, or they've done Darknet Diaries, like, I encourage you to go out and find all the information. Maybe that's something we should do, Justin, is put it all in one spot. But go watch the videos that of the legislation that they did, or lack of legislation, I should say, whatever you want to call that. I don't even know what that meeting was called, but go watch
Judicial Oversight Committee.
Yeah,
And they
go
may have
watch.
taken that video down.
Yeah, go watch the. I think somebody found it. What didn't someone end up finding it later? One of the reporters that we talked to.
Okay.
I think they ended up finding it. But yeah, watch those videos. Watch the oversight committee. Listen to the stuff that they say. Like, listen to how nobody is really interested in the security of it. They're more interested in the political ramifications and the outlook and how people are going to view this stuff, rather than actual security of the people. If you go through and you read everything, it will blow your mind at how ignorant a lot of the processes that we have and the people that we have in place making these decisions are. They're making snap decisions based on things they have no idea about, none whatsoever.
So I would say, like, some of the main takeaways from this entire interview is that we still have people that are not aware of the hacker community and what we do and why we're actually needed in this space. Because you wouldn't have us secure anything if you didn't have us in the first place. That's the first thing. We need legislation that protects. Also, every single officer out there should always have their body cam on. They should never, ever be able to turn that thing off. I feel like there should be some sort of punishment on that front. That's not okay. That's never okay. But the most important thing is that if you see something or you hear something that is not right, is to stand up and say something, because you could be helping out other people.
Which huge kudos to the security industry, InfoSec community. You guys did it. It was incredible. I mean, we've read about that, and stories from the past in the 90s when hackers are just getting prejudiced against by the government. Everyone rose to this occasion. It was unbelievable, the support that we had from people we've never met. Of course, everyone that knows us, calling us up, doing whatever they can for us. But to see thousands of people stand up in unison and say, this is bullshit. These guys are trying to help you and you're putting them in jail. It was unbelievable, the things people were doing. It was amazing. So absolutely could not end this without saying thank you to the InfoSec community.
Excellent. Do you guys have any last parting words of advisement or wisdom that you want to share with the community, or want them to share it for you outside of the community?
The thing that I would like to say is piggyback on what Justin said is, we as a community are very powerful. The skill sets that we have, the things we're able to do, the backing that we have as far as knowledge and just gumption overall. The support that we had was amazing. Like, we need that support in everything we're trying to do in regards to getting things changed and getting laws passed. And if we collectively worked together as a community, not just when things that shouldn't happen, but in order to get things that should happen to happen, we would be wildly successful. Get involved and help. And it sometimes it's just as simple as, you had no idea that the person that or the buddy that you have could help out in this situation. And then just a lot of times that networking and linking two people together so they can talk to each other and finding out that this is the exact person that I need. Like, this person can help me with exactly what I want in this situation. So if anything, just work together and help out. And thank you guys all so much for banding together and everything that we're doing here is amazing. Like, we need to do more of this.
That's it.
Thank you, Justin and Gary, for sharing what happened. And thank you for letting me ask any question that came to my mind. This is great. I love when I get to interview people without any, can't talk about this or that. Thank you guys for being transparent with the community. And thank you for sharing your story. And I cannot imagine the bravery that you must have had to have during it and even afterwards. I mean, it's a fear we all have, but thank you guys so much. If anyone has any remaining questions for either one of them, please go in Discord and ask your questions, and they will be there. And if there's ever questions later on in this event, feel free to reach out to Justin and Gary. Their handles are on the site. All right, Omar, take it away.
We're going in a quick break, and we'll have the next speaker within the next 2 minutes or so. Be right back.